You can lower that just a little bit, Brad. I appreciate. No, I said lower it a little bit. There you go. Yeah, I talk with my mouth, not my eyes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. He's just trying to be helpful. See, for Brad to get anything right, Shantae has to be involved. We understand. But she, her home was untouched, and yesterday, for the first time since the fire, they got to go into their homes, those who had homes left. And so she was talking about how it was pretty much untouched. It's almost as if there was not a fire. And I said, that is marvelous how God, she's suffering from stage 4 cancer. And the last thing, a patient who's dealing with chemo treatment and hair loss and pain and limb swelling and things like that, the last thing they need is to have to deal with all of their possessions burned up in a fire. And so the Lord was really merciful to her, and I do appreciate that. And I solicit your prayers as she moves on. All right, the pastor told me that I would be up about 11:35, although I'm 10 minutes late. Thank God to Sister Larissa. But at any rate, I said to my wife, if I get up at 11:35, we'll be going home at 12. So, well, it was broken, so here we go. But there is, and I solicit your prayers. I've gotten to a point now where I don't do a lot of serious preaching anymore. I just kind of talk along as I go along. And I tell pastors who invite me to preach, if you're looking for someone to hoop, you probably need to get someone to come after me, because I'm not going to do that. And if you're looking for someone to arouse the crowd, I'm not going to do that. In fact, y'all can take a nap while I'm preaching if you like. And I promise I won't disturb you. But there is a story in the Bible. It's called a pericope in the Bible that talks about the problem of the wine. The problem of the wine. Now, Janice, wipe the smile off your face. We won't be drinking any wine today. I said, the problem of wine. She, ooh, wee, wow. No, none of that. But the problem of the wine, they had a wine problem during the early part of Jesus' ministry. He, along with his mom, he was invited to a wedding. And when he got there, at some point, they ran out of wine. And so someone went to his mother and said to her, and I'm talking with some editorial liberty, went to his mother and said, we ran out of our good wine. Can you ask your son to get us some more wine? So she went to Jesus and told Jesus that they have a wine problem. And this is in the 2nd chapter of the book of St. John. I'm not going to read it, so you don't have to turn to it if you don't want to. But if you want to read, it's verse number 10 is the verse that I am primarily interested in focusing on. She said, can you help us with this wine problem? And Jesus responded to his mother and said, what has any of this to do with me? Do I look like a wine merchant? Do I have wine in the trunk of my car or the back of my Campbell? What has any of this wine problem to do with me? It's amazing how often we go to Jesus about things that really are not Jesus' problem. We go to things that aren't his concern. We go to things, in other words, we go to things that we could very well solve ourselves. Isn't that amazing? But Jesus said to his mom, why don't you go ahead, inasmuch as you've come to me? And I think a lot of the things that the Lord does for all of us are done on the same basis. Inasmuch as you've come to me, this is not my problem, but inasmuch as you've come to me, I will address it anyway. So Jesus said, I tell you what I need you to do. Just have the hosts fill all of the wine bottles, the wine barrels, the wine pots, so to speak. Fill them all up with water and fill them to the brim. I want them to be so full that if anything else is put into the pot, they will overflow. Now, what Jesus is doing is something that he has been trying to do for us for many, many years. He wants us to come to the realization that if anything positive is ever done in our lives, he gets the credit. Do y'all get that? If things go well for us, he gets the credit. And I can hear some of you now saying, well, what about if things go bad? Well, first of all, things only go bad when the Lord needs to teach us how to go to the next phase. The Lord gets no pleasure in causing havoc in the life of his people. Do you know if we could live a perfect life, we would not have any problems whatsoever? I know that because the Bible says that. The Bible says it in so many different ways. One of my favorite texts is that those whose minds are stayed on Jesus, he will keep them in what, Brother Brad? In perfect peace. Do you know what perfect peace means? It means the absolute absence of any kind of problem. So if we could live our lives perfectly, there would be no problem or no breach of peace in our lives. Now, if that's the case, then what the Lord is saying to us is that the more perfectly you live, the more peacefully you live. And if that's the goal that God has for all of us, then that can be interpreted to suggest that the only reason God allows trouble in our lives is to bring us to the point where we can learn to peacefully and faithfully depend on him. Isn't that an amazing reality? If somehow we could learn to wholly depend on God and wholly relate to God in the conduct of life's business, then there would be no need for trials and troubles to come upon us. Every trial, Mother Claire, is designed by God to make you strong. Every trial, every problem is designed by God to make you better. And so if you could somehow find that reservoir of strength, if you could somehow find that place of being better, if you could somehow get to that place and stay in that place, then there'd be no need for the trial. Isn't that amazing? So when a trial comes, then this is a time for you to appreciate God for giving you a good washing so that you can look better when it's time to be shown. And so here comes this mother and says we have a problem, and Jesus' answer was to fill the barrel to the point that nobody can put not even a speck of powder in it. I'm not going to work in your life if after I get done, someone, including you, can come along and say, I did this. God will not share his glory with anyone. The reason we fail sometimes is because God knows that we haven't matured to the point of understanding who gets the credit. You know, and we're the same way. Nobody wants to do something and watch someone else take the credit for it. Nobody wants to do that. You know, I get on my wife sometimes because when somebody tells her she's cute, she smiles as if to say, well, after all. And it irritates me that she doesn't inform them immediately that my husband made me this way. Because, Mother Bertha, without Jesse, you would be nothing. You understand that. You understand. And so God does not like the idea that here I am, I bring you out, and you start acting like you came out yourself. Now, we need to start filling our water pots to the brim. This way, anybody with even an ounce of common sense could know that there's no way you could have put anything else into this mix because it was filled to the brim. Well, here comes Jesus to do the next part of his situation, and he just without any additives, without any kind of hocus pocus, without a drop of this or a drop of that. Every now and then my wife will make a smoothie, and she'll bring me a smoothie, and the first thing I ask of her is what's in it. Because she puts crazy stuff in smoothies. I mean, crazy stuff. I mean, just crazy stuff. And I don't drink smoothies, Sister Tart, with crazy stuff in it. Now, I don't mind oranges and apples, and I can even take a cucumber every now and then. I don't even mind kale if it's necessary. I don't mind lemons. I don't mind a little ice cream even. But I don't want no powder in it and no whatever that other stuff is she calls. I don't want no protein powder and no yeast powder and no monkey powder and I don't want none of that stuff. You know, if you want that, you drink it. You know, I went to the store the other day and they were selling possum urine. I don't want no possum urine in my smoothie. I just want good stuff. Now I don't know what it's for. They had a whole bunch of it, and they also had some fox urine. Now, and you could buy it by the gallon. Now I don't know. I have no idea what that stuff does for anybody. I didn't buy any because I was afraid if I bought some, it would end up in the smoothie, and I didn't want that. But the Lord wants us to be in a position where, first of all, we know that nothing else went into this mix but the glory of God. That's all. That's all. That's all. I will only bring you out when you concede that there's no other way. I will only bring you out when you reach a point of resolution where you know that if the Lord don't help me, I do not stand a chance. I will only be your help if you have no other help. As long as you have the money, I'm not going to bless you with the object. I don't want you telling people that you could have done it. And so this wine problem raised a very interesting reality for all of us in our attempt to deal with God. You got to get to a point where he alone. What does the song say? To God be the glory. To God be the glory for all that he has done. Understand that even the Lord's Prayer ends with the idea that the glory is the Lord's. And so it's important that we understand that until we're ready to give up the glory, And we have to be able to tell folk that the Lord did it. If it had not been for the Lord, if it had not been for the Lord on my side, if it had not been for the Lord, I would not be here. We have to reach that point. I think that when someone walks up to you and tell you how nice you look, you ought to say, well, thank God for that. Because you didn't do it. 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 You might have bought the clothes, but it was the Lord that gave you the capacity to buy the clothes. You might have bought the clothes, but listen, there are a lot of folk who leave their home to go to the clothing store and end up in the morgue instead. It happened just the other day. This last week. Happened last week. Twice last week. And so, to God be the glory. Now let me just say, just throw this in as a caveat, and I'm almost done. But in order for God to function in your life, you got to deal with life from a position, now watch this. You've got to deal with life from a position of honor and honesty. God will not bless you in your crookedness. You can't set out to do something wrong and ask God to bless you in the process. Can't do it. Honesty, honesty, honesty. God wants absolute honesty from all of us. Oh, I'm not gonna work with you. I'm not gonna help you out. And so, finally, Jesus did what was asked of him. He turned, without any other ingredients, the water into wine. Now here is the reaction, Brother Brad. In verse number 10, they make an observation. They say in verse 10, usually the host will serve the best wine first, because this is when the sense of the people is more impressionable. They're coming in, they're looking for some good wine, they're looking for some good food, and so he makes that first impression by serving the best wine. But in this situation, we have the question, why have they reserved or held back the best wine until the last? Don't you know by now people are almost drunk and they cannot really appreciate the quality of the wine that you're serving now? Well, I just want to make one point and then I'll be done. And that point is that you will never be able to appreciate the quality of what God is doing in your life until you get rid of all other human influences so that you can appreciate, savor the taste of what God is doing, and understand that the longer you walk with God and the more completely you walk with God, then that brings a highlight on the quality of what God does. Let me tell you something. You know, one of the things, and they say, I've had so many people say to me, I don't know why people think I'm old. I don't know why they think that. I don't know why. I'm still 39 and some months. I've been saying that for a long time, 39 and some months. I don't remember how many months now, because the calculation has gotten pretty heavy now. When you start multiplying 12 by all those years, it becomes a problem. But I'm 39 and some months. But people come to me all the time. I don't ask them for this. I'm not soliciting advice. I didn't ask you anything. And people come to me and say, well, Bishop, you're old now. You got to take it easy. What is there about me that makes you think I'm old? Is it the suit I'm wearing? Well, I'll pull it off. You see? And so years ago, I was a publisher of a newspaper. Some of y'all probably remember the North Side Journal. I don't even know if it's in existence anymore. But all the folk in North St. Louis would receive this journal. Now, if you lived in North County, you got the North County Journal. If you lived in South County, you got the South County Journal. You lived in Clayton or University City, or you got the Journal there in Manchester. There were like 49 different journals all over the metropolitan area that addressed the area. But that little black community of North St. Louis, that was just a journal where they just published it so that advertisers would know that they had coverage in the whole metropolitan area. But they didn't have a publisher. They didn't have a what do you call those people? A photographer, a reporter, or anybody to go into North St. Louis and dig out news and show news. They just took stuff from all the other journals and dumped it in the North Side Journal. So one day I went to put an ad in the paper. It was about ministry, as a matter of fact. And the owner said to me, he said, I like your style. I like the way you talk. I like the way you look. I like your professionalism. Would you be amenable to accepting a job with my newspaper? I said, well, it depends. If I don't have to do anything, I'll be happy to accept it. He said, good, because you won't have to do anything. All you have to do is every now and then show up so we can know that you are available. But then if we need anyone to go to a meeting or go to a Chamber of Commerce affair or go to some kind of marketing thing, then we call you and you go. But that may happen maybe once or twice a week, if that often. But otherwise, you just kind of cool out, come into the office, look around, and then leave, so long as there's nothing to do. Well, I took that job. I held that job for a lot of years. I mean, I would go into the office at 8 o'clock in the morning. By 9 o'clock, I'm out having breakfast and doing my real day. And they paid me well. But after a while, I got tired of that. And so I went to the boss, I went to the owner, and I said, look, let me do something. This paper does not cost you, well, no, it does cost to produce because you got to print it, but there's no sales cost. There's no what do you call it, reporter. There's no photographers. It doesn't cost you anything in that sense. So give me the permission to play some games with this paper, and I guarantee you that at some point I'll make it profitable for you. He said, all right. He said, we spend $8,000 a week just to produce that paper. We take in nothing from it except those things that are standard throughout the entire area that goes into that paper. But there's no specific revenue for that paper. So he gave it to me. I contacted a few of the ghetto supermarkets, like Big B Market, which was, I think, on Page or Hamilton or one of those places. There's a market in U City that just closed down, by the way. Pete's Market, and there was a market down on 14th Street. I don't remember the name of that one either. But I contacted all these markets. I said, listen, I'd like to give you a full-page color ad free in this North Side Journal. And I'm going to do it for 4 weeks. And they couldn't believe it. They thought Christmas had come. And so we did. 4 weeks later, I went to the owner and said, now, your time's up. If you want to continue this ad, it's going to cost you $2,000 a week. And if you don't want to pay the $2,000, we're going to drop you from the paper, and you will not be able to get back in. Well, you can't do that. I've realized how much business this paper has brought. People come in with this ad in their hand. You can't cut me off like that. Sir, you had 4 weeks. You had 4 weeks. Long story was that they agreed to run the ad now for the next year at $2,000 a week. I did it to one store, then the next store, then the next store, then the next store. I ended up with a revenue, guaranteed additional revenue of $8,000 a week, which took care of the total cost of the newspaper. Within the next few months, and this is just still working maybe 2 hours a day, the next couple of months, we increased the revenue to $12,000 a week. Well, it got so much that my newspaper became the largest producing revenue paper in the whole chain. So they had a huge banquet, and by then now, the real owner came in from New York, the guy who owned the New Yorker magazine. He came in from New York, and we had a big banquet down at the Adams Market, and we had 1,000 people there. And I looked around that room, and I was the only black person in that whole room that was part of the event. Now, there were servers and people like that. But I had a tuxedo on because it was an affair, and I was getting an award for being the greatest, the highest producing publisher of any of the newspapers in that chain. So here, Mr. Ralph Ingersoll, who was the owner of the whole operation. I had never met him. He had never met me because we thought that Donnelly was the owner. So all of a sudden, I'm sitting there at not the head table, because he was at the head table. I'm at the front table. And I got up to do something. I don't know what I got up for. He said, sir, can you bring us a pitcher of water? I said, what is it about me that makes you think I'm a waiter? I said, is it the tuxedo jacket? And so I pulled the jacket off and dropped it on the floor. I said, maybe it's the bow tie. So I pulled the bow tie off and dropped it on the floor. I said, maybe it's the cummerbund. So I pulled it off and dropped it on the floor. Meanwhile, he's looking more and more puzzled because he's not understanding why this waiter is acting a fool. I said, maybe it's my shirt. So I pulled my shirt off and dropped it on the floor. Is it the pants I'm wearing? And by then, Mr. Donnelly was sitting close by, suddenly realized what was transpiring because he knew me. He said, no, please, stop. And so he turned to Mr. Ingersoll. He said, that's Jesse Battle. Mr. Ingersoll said, Jesse Battle, where do I know that name from? He's the top name on the list today of the people that you're giving an award to. All of a sudden, Mr. Ingersoll turned as red as he could be. He was so embarrassed. And he started apologizing to me. I just thought that maybe you thought that because I'm black, I must be a server. That's what you thought. Now, keep in mind, this was many years ago. I said, but I happen to be the one that brings into your outfit for a paper that was costing you $8,000 a week. I'm now bringing you in $28,000 a week. He was so embarrassed and so apologetic. He said, sir, whatever you want from me, in money, in help, in supplies, in whatever, just say it and I'll give it to you. I don't know how much money you're making, but how would a 30% raise look to you? I said, not as good as 40%. When that meeting was over, I had left there really a hero. Now, one of my buddies said to me, man, you really played this one, didn't you? Now, I'm still a preacher now. So I said to him, Rick, this is what God wants of all of us. Pull off the tuxedo jacket. Pull off the shirt. Pull off the tie. Pull off the cummerbund. Whatever makes people think you're doing it, pull it off so that they can see what the real effect is behind what's happening. I said, listen. We got to learn to pull off stuff that misidentifies us. if it's that fancy outfit you got on that people is giving the credit to you being the person you are, then get rid of it. There's a text in the Bible, and I promise you I'll be done. There's a text in the Bible that says if your right hand offends you, pluck it off. Cut it off, brother. Cut it off. Cut it off. Now, offend doesn't mean that it necessarily causes you bodily harm. But if it gets into the way of the progress of life, I need you to eliminate anything that stops people from seeing me. Let them see me. If it's your vocation, if it's your speech, if it's your attitude, if it's your style, I want them to see me. Because if they don't see me, there's no reason for me to turn the water of your life into wine. If your neighbors can't see me, if your family can't see me, if after years and years you went from being a nobody to a somebody because God raised you up, don't let them think, don't make them think it's because of what you did. Don't say, well, you know, I went to school and got an education since you last saw me, and now I am. No. No. Don't give your school the glory. And the thing that's so funny about that, Jan, you barely made it. I don't mean you, but they barely made it anyway. Don't give the school the glory. Well, you know, I got a good job, and so now I can live better. No. It's not the job that's helping you live better. It's God that's helping you live better. Because I know people that's got jobs better than yours, but they're still not living well. It's not the job that makes you live better. It's the God of the job that makes you live better. And you got to be able to give God the glory. Does that make sense? Does it make sense? You got to be able to give God the glory. The best wine is reserved, the best wine of your life is reserved not for the end of your life, but it's reserved until you get enough sense to be able to recognize who's moving behind your life that gives you that life. Now, the unfortunate thing about that is sometimes that doesn't come until age happens. Brother Brady was a dear friend of mine, and I love the man, and I think about him often even today. He's gone on now to be with the Lord. And I said to him when he turned, I think it was 75, I said, man, I'm so glad you're 75 because now you will start living right. And he couldn't understand what I was talking about. I said, well, you see, the reason you weren't living right before, and I'm just teasing him, I'm just playing with him. You know, I play with some people. Not everybody, but some people. I said, the reason you weren't living right before was you had too much energy to do wrong. But now that you're too old to do wrong, you have no choice now but to do right. And that's what happens. As we get older, Sister Denise Bryant, we start doing right. We really do. 71 years old. Now, you're going to start doing right. We're going to see a difference in your life. Thank God. When we get to that point, then God start turning our water into wine. Because now we have moved out everything and everybody, including ourselves and our own egos, who could steal God's glory, and now we say readily, to God be the glory. I got a cap that someone bought me. Some of y'all have seen it, some of you haven't. I got a cap that someone bought me. It says, pastor warning. Anything you say to me could be used in a sermon. So last Sunday you came into the green room proudly telling me you had a birthday and you're 71. You should have kept it to yourself. All right, I'm done. Anybody want to give your life to Jesus? Anybody want to be saved? Anybody want to correct your way?